Hello, welcome to Core Connection Wellness. Today I had the pleasure of speaking to Melanie Murphy, who is a holistic and functional registered dietitian, nutritionist, and mindset coach based out of LA. Melanie holds a master's degree in nutrition, health span, and longevity from USC. In her private practice, Wholistic Ritual, Melanie uses food and nutrition as a tool for healing. We talk about many nutrition subjects in our interview. I love how Melanie connects nutrition for the body, for the brain, the mind, cognition, and spirit and purpose. So it's an integrated approach. I hope you learn a lot and you find this interview valuable. Thank you for being here and enjoy. Hi, Melanie. How are you today?
I'm doing great. So excited to be here with you. How are you?
I'm doing really well, thanks.
Good.
I am excited to have you because nutrition is really a subject that I'm very interested in. I think a lot of people are interested in nutrition because there's so much information out there. It's really difficult to figure out what's right and what works. So I'm excited to jump right in and talk to you today. So thanks for being here.
Absolutely. My favorite topic.
That's great. So the first thing I'd like to ask you is how does nutrition really play a role in living a balanced and healthy life?
It's a loaded question. But so here's my philosophy in nutrition, which kind of is exactly what this question embodies. Is we are uniquely living in a body. Our souls are living in a body, and that's a very unique experience to be in a body. And we have a limitation by being in our body, right? That our body needs to be capable of moving and breathing and functioning about this world so that we can go about doing our soul's actual purpose and mission here, right? So,
Right.
but we have to take care of this body. It's the only one that we have. And we have to take care of it in order to actually be able to pursue what we want to do and pursue here. Our body runs off of energy from food that we eat. And it can either turn our cells on and make our body run optimally, or it can turn on the wrong things and make us feel crummy and tired and fatigued. So we have a choice every single time we pick up a piece of food or making a meal or deciding something to eat. We have a choice to either turn on ourselves in a positive way that promotes energy and happiness and joyfulness, or to promote these pathways that promote inflammation, fatigue, exhaustion, forgetfulness, all these things, all these symptomology that we don't want. So food can determine a lot of how our body functions. And if our body is functioning well, our mind is likely functioning well, which means we're probably
Right.
feeling and thinking, positively, or we're not. So it all starts with food.
Oh, I couldn't agree more with you. I think that the connection between health and what we eat, I think it's just integral to what
Absolutely.
kind of a healthy lifestyle, right?
Absolutely.
And do you think that the foods that are, by and large, the foods that are healthy for our body, are they healthy for our brain as well?
Most of the time. It's an interesting question that you ask, because there are general foods that are known to be healthy, right? Healthier than
Right.
others. We prefer you to eat whole foods from the earth rather than processed foods from a package, right? I mean, these are general principles of that
Right.
pretty much go without saying. However, it is important in order to figure out what works for your brain and therefore therefore your body, or body and therefore your brain, is to figure out what foods actually work well for your specific body type. And that can be wide and vast. It's not always that, broccoli and kale and potatoes works well for somebody. That might not work well for a person's body, but something else might. So yes, I would say if you are treating your body right, to answer your question, if you're treating your body with the foods that work well for your body, your brain will reap the benefits. But if you haven't taken the time to figure out what foods work well for your body, it may not work well for your brain either.
Wow. So the foods that are right for you, they may not all be right for me, even if they're healthy foods.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So what
Absolutely.
kind of bio-individual and are you very bio-individual in your approach to when with your
Absolutely.
patients?
Yes.
I
There's
love
no
that.
way around that. I have patients who, and this comes from our somewhat from our ancestry. Where is our lineage
Right.
from? Some people who are from Northern Europe do really well with potatoes, for instance, and then people who are from a totally different geographic area where potatoes were not for, the hundreds of years that their ancestors were, growing and evolving, they don't tolerate potatoes well. And potatoes generally are a healthy food, right? And they're healthy for
Right.
a lot of individuals, but it's not always that a blanket statement, at all. And this is something that I work on with patients all the time. They come to me and say, well,
Wow.
I'm eating avocados and kale and I'm still having trouble. And I'm like, well, let's look at that. Let's look at what that means for your body type, because you may not tolerate those things well. So
Okay. So tell me a little bit when you're talking about eating for your body type, what do you mean body type?
great question. There's a lot that goes into it. A
Oh,
lot that goes into it. There's, like I already mentioned, there is genetic components to what
right.
you are able to tolerate or not, and that can be a result of your ancestral lineage. There is also components to where you live now. So, I see people who, and this is because our food supply has changed so drastically, even from when you were growing up. I talk about this with my parents all the time, that my
Right.
my grandparents, my great grandparents, they didn't the soil was actually different, so the foods that they were getting and the nutrients they were getting is very different than what we're getting now. And that changes our body's ability to tolerate certain foods or not, is simply where you live and what kinds of foods you're currently eating. And then I would say even the environment. So an environment plays a massive role in our ability to, our genes turning on or off, um, and receiving certain nutrients or not, or our ability to receive certain nutrients. And that's primarily a toxicity conversation. So toxins in our environment, toxins in our water, toxins in our food. So a lot of this does play a role in our ability to tolerate certain foods as well.
That's fascinating. There's so many elements, and I think that that's, a real positive because you can work on there are so many things that you can do to adjust your diet, your lifestyle, and your environment to make a big difference in your health, right?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah. And
So, God, I love
you'd
that.
you'd see results, if you took a deep dive into your, not just your diet, but your environment, your relationships, your work life, all of these things that play a role in the whole person. If you took a deep dive and actually committed to a 6 month overhaul of changing these things, you can absolutely change your DNA. You can change your DNA. Our DNA can be changed. It's changed minute by minute from every single food that we're eating, from every decision that we make every single day of our lives. So you would look and feel like a different person entirely within 6 months.
So, if I eat the organic broccoli instead of the Cheetos,
Oh yeah.
that would be a good step in the right direction, right?
Assuming broccoli works for your body. Yes. I would say that.
Maybe not, right? Ooh,
Yeah,
there we
exactly.
go.
Exactly.
But Cheetos never work.
Oh man, Cheetos rarely work. Rarely.
Rarely. Okay, we'll say
Yeah.
rarely.
Yeah.
So we might have talked a little bit about this in our conversation already, but can you be a little more specific about how food acts as medicine in our bodies? And we talked about our bodies, but in our minds, and I know that you work a lot with body, mind, and spirit, kind of our soul and our spirit, who we are, and our purpose.
Right. So, this kind of plays into the very first question that you had mentioned before about um, how nutrition plays a role in our overall health. Our bodies are feeding off of the food that we eat, and that's how we get energy. It's every single time we eat food, our cells are responding to it, are either in a positive way or in a negative way. Sometimes in a neutral way, but you want it to be benefiting. Your cells need to be fueled in the proper way. When our cells are fueled in a proper way, when our physical body is adequately nourished, our brain, because our brain and our body are constantly communicating, and most of the time that's happening in our gut. So there's this connection between our gut and our brain that is constantly communicating, and our gut is where all of our nutrients are actually digested and absorbed, and then from there it gets thrown all over our body and into our cells and through our blood. So if something is not, that's why, if you're not tolerating a food well, it may not be absorbed there in your gut, and therefore you're not actually getting the nutrients that turns the cell on and then is able to tell your brain, oh, I need certain things, or I'm feeling well, I'm not feeling well, something's wrong, all those cues that we're getting in our brain. So it starts in our body, and then our body is able to tell our brain, yes, we're doing well, or no, we're not. And sometimes that comes off as anxiety or whatever. Our brain is constantly responding to what's happening in our body. And if our brain is doing well, if our body is doing well, then the idea is that you will feel liberated in your body, liberated in your mind, and motivated to actually be able to pursue what you're actually here to pursue, which we all have a purpose here, right? We all have a reason for being here. We have a mission or several missions, but if we are bound by the illness that's in our body or the illness that's in our brain because of what's happening in our body, we will be too bogged down to be able to actually pursue why we're here and what we're actually meant to do. And I think that's why I focus on, yes, my work is to help people live joyfully and full, happy lives and in their alignment and in their purpose. But it starts by taking care of your body, because if it doesn't happen there, we're limited. We're extremely limited.
That's so true. If you're having physical issues, you know, for me, a lot of the physical issues that I have had over the years have been like gut issues or stomach issues or intolerance issues. And if
Mm-hmm.
you're overwhelmed with those things, there's no next level. I mean, my brain is not it's not functioning well because all I can think of is what's going on in my body. So that is so
Oh
true. And
yeah.
then yeah, when your brain works better, then you can start to think about purpose. So it is
Mm-hmm.
a hierarchy and a cycle that you kind of have to go through to get that actualization, that more of that self,
Absolutely.
purpose. Boy, that and
Absolutely.
it all starts with food.
All starts with food. It all starts with, I mean, we can't live here. We're not only limited to the fact that we have a body, our bodies are ensouled, right? We're in a body, but we're also required to take care of it. And the only one of the best ways to take care of it and to actually continue to function here is with food. If you don't eat, we can't survive, right? So we want to not only survive, we want to be able to thrive too. So we've evolved way past the stage of human existence when we were just trying to survive. Now we're in a stage of human existence where we're trying to thrive, and we're trying to thrive amongst everyone else thriving as well, right? So that's that we're making the shift. We're finally making the shift into, we're out of survival mode. for sure.
What, that's great. Can you, talking about there's sometimes we all get stressed and there's stressful things always going on. But can you eat to protect your body from the effects of stress, anxiety, fear, whatever's going on? Can you kind of fortify
Absolutely.
yourself to to be strong, to kind of conquer all when it comes to stress and anxiety?
Yes. I think there's different stages of that. Somebody, you can't just say this is what you need to do. There's a lot of pre-steps in terms of mindfulness and really even
Yes,
analyzing your current state of life, right? To be able to get to the step of how can I balance myself, right? So there's
I
lots that
agree.
come before, many steps that come before. But when I work with patients, and this is a teaching that I got from one of my very favorite practitioners. Her name is Deanna Minnick. She coined this idea that, and this is not a new concept, but it is new in terms of nutrition. Is that we have body chakras, right? We have 7 different
Mhm.
chakras from our head down to our sacrum, basically. And each of those chakras represent not only an emotional state, but it represents a physiological state as well as a nutritional color and nutritional foods, right? So if you talk about your crown chakra, which is your spiritual chakra, this is represented by the color white. And if your spiritual or if your crown chakra is functioning well, then you ideally are connected to spirit, you're connected to your intuition, you're connected to your ability to understand things that are not just in this physical form, right? Those feelings of being connected to something greater than yourself. But that color white happens to be associated with onions, garlic, cauliflower, all of these foods that all of those, the phytonutrients found in white foods happen to be detoxifying. And that crown chakra is a detoxifying, it needs to be detoxified in order for you to be able to function properly there. So isn't it funny that the crown chakra is represented by the color white, and it happens, the phytonutrients found in white foods happen to support that chakra, right? So, and we have 7 of those, and that you can dive deep into what that means and how the certain specific colors in foods can actually help support that. But when you talked about stress, for instance, stress is often associated with our root chakra. Our root chakra is the
Mhm.
very first chakra that we have. It's in our right below our pelvis, but it's the attributes of your root chakra are grounding, rooting into the earth, right? Feeling stable and secure. So a lot of people with imbalances in their root chakra might have financial issues or things that might make them feel unearthed or insecure in their life, right? But it's also physiologically represented by um, our immune system and our adrenal glands and all of the things related to your stress. So if I have somebody that comes in to see me with just stressed to the max, right? Within their life, maybe, with relationships and money, and they don't have a house, and their job security is all over the place. One of the first things I'll do is we need to work on your root chakra, which is represented by the color red. We're going to eat all sorts of red foods for the foreseeable future to keep yourself grounded. We're going to eat beets, we're going to eat tomatoes, we're going to eat all of these foods that helps to ground you back into your body, back into your earth. And all of those red foods, the lycopene and the resveratrol that are the phytonutrients found in those foods, happen to be very beneficial for your adrenal glands, your stress hormones, all of those things. So this is, hopefully answering your question, but it's all
Wow.
related.
That is so interesting because, I have learned about chakras through the years, and energy centers and all of that, but relating the colors of food to the colors of
Mm-hmm.
the traditional, chakras for the energy centers, That is so interesting. I've never
Yep.
really heard that concept before. I've never delved
Oh
in. This is
yeah. Oh yeah.
how interesting.
So
I love that.
interesting. And I like
Okay.
I do too. And it's so it's I'm a big nerd at heart, you know, with all sciencey stuff. And I, you know, reading about the different phytonutrients found in certain colors of food. Like one of my favorite ones is the heart chakra. The heart chakra is obviously represented by your heart and your rib cage, but it's also represented by the color green. And the color green in food is often chlorophyll and, you know, a variety of other phytonutrients that happen to be directly associated with circulation. And where does all of our circulation stem from? Our heart. Our heart is what's pumping all throughout our circulatory system. So interesting that green foods that is represented by your heart chakra is going to help with oxygen flow, with the ability for your heart to pump properly and to circulate blood throughout our body, right? Really, really fascinating stuff.
It does make so much sense when it's put that way.
Mm-hmm.
It just, I, boy, that gives me a lot of talk about being a nerd. Me too. Uh, I love
Oh
the
yeah,
sciencey stuff as
talk about
well.
for hours.
I know there's a lot of studies I need to read now. So
Oh yeah.
this is great. I wanted to talk to you since I've got you here. I wanted to talk to you a little bit about intermittent fasting or fasting at all, water fasting, intermittent fasting, and kind of get your take on its efficacy, its usefulness for different populations or demographics. What is, I know it's a big question, but can you talk a little bit about fasting?
Absolutely. Um, so fasting, I will use this opportunity to say that fasting and intermittent fasting are different. They're very
Right.
different. The
Mm-hmm.
fast that the reason they or the fact that they use the word fast confuses people sometimes,
Right.
because fasting, the actual act of fasting in the traditional sense, is no food for prolonged periods of time, for, you know, 1 to 7 days. Some people do fasting under medical supervision for up to a month at a time. Um, but fasting is very, very, very low calorie and or no calories at all outside of water. And water has no calories, so it's, you know, you do get water but no food. Intermittent fasting is related to the amount of hours in the day that you are feeding. So feeding means that, you know, you wake up and your first bite of food is at 7 a.m. and then you eat dinner and your last bite of food is at 8. Your feeding time is from 7 to 8. And intermittent
Okay.
fasting means that you are talking about the hours of the day in which you are eating. Okay. Fasting is one of my very favorite topics because it is majorly important for longevity and optimal aging. When you look at all of the research studies done on the blue zones are the areas around the world in which the most centenarians, people living over 100, are living and thriving and healthy and happy, right? We have about 8 of them around the world. Every single blue zone happens to incorporate some form of fasting throughout their year. And it is one of the underlying weaves or, you know, commonalities that all of the blue zones have. And if you look at all the research, what happens when our bodies fast, actually I'll go back one little bit. Our body is will always prioritize 2 things: digestion and reproduction. If we are digesting food, that is the only thing our body will focus on until that thing is done. If we are growing a child, if we are having sex, if we are reproducing in any sort of way, our bodies will prioritize that. Those are the 2 things above anything else that our body will prioritize. If our body is doing a digestive state or in a digestive state or reproducing, cellular repair gets put to the back burner. Any sort of cleanup in our body gets put to the back burner. So our body is able to do it to a certain extent, but that's why sleeping is so important, because we're neither digesting nor are we reproducing, usually, unless you're pregnant. So we're able
Right.
to have a mass amount of time in which we are fully in repair mode, right? Our cells are actually turning and cleaning up and repairing so that we can work more optimally the next day. So if you fast, if your body is fasting, what happens is you're putting yourself in a starvation state. And when our bodies are in a starvation state, what happens is our cells kind of go into this little bubble, and they immediately think, oh, shoot, we don't know when we're going to get food again. So we need to start making sure that we can work really well. So what they do is they go in their little bubble and they start churning out they start eating up all the dead cells. Like, you don't function well, get out of here, you're weighing us down, we need to fix this thing, we need to fix this thing so that you can function. Really, it's very hard to kill a body. I'm telling you, it's, our bodies are primed to try to stay alive, right? So that's what's
Right.
happening when we're in a fasting mode, is that our cells are just massively turning out cellular repair and rejuvenation, and even our stem cells at a certain stage end up exponentially producing stem cells. So we're actually we're actually eliminating or repairing certain forms of aging that may have accumulated over time, right? So we're actually almost reversing aging in a certain sense. So fasting is really, really, really important to do a couple of times a year. And it doesn't have to be, a week of just water at all. It can be, there's a lot of fasting mimicking diets. I studied under Dr. Walter Longo at USC. He's the fasting mimicking diet guru.
Wow.
And yeah, really, really fascinating man. Again, another person you guys, outside of Deanna Minnick, you guys should definitely learn more about them. They're great. But you can fast, do a water fast or some sort of very, very low calorie fast with a dietitian or under medical supervision for 3 to 5 days. And that's really a sweet spot for just restarting your body and giving your body a prolonged period of time in which it can repair itself and rejuvenate itself. Because we're constantly either eating or we're stressed about something, and our bodies are constantly taking in all of that and trying to shuffle it out of our body. But if we don't give ourselves that time, it's hard for our body to keep up. So fasting 1 to 2 times a year is well known in the blue zones, and is something that I love. It, assuming that you don't have any sort of disordered eating, because that's a different topic. But if you are otherwise in a healthy state, fasting is a great component to reduce aging and healthy lifestyle. The concept is similar, though, behind the intermittent fasting, because mostly because especially in America and first world countries who have adopted the American diet, where lots of people are eating or feeding the feeding hours for 18 hours of our 24-hour day. There's lots of people that are eating all day, every day. And if we don't stop and give our body real consecutive time to clean up, it won't, because it's constantly digesting, and digesting always comes number one, right? And reproduction always come first before anything else. So
Right.
that's why intermittent fasting is, let's reduce your feeding time just a little bit. It doesn't even have to be, some people go a little too strict, in my opinion. They're only eating 4 to 6 hours a day. That's extreme, in my opinion. I don't think you need to do that. 12 hours a day, 12 hours on and 12 hours off is kind of the sweet spot. You could even go a little bit tighter and go 10 hours eating, 14 hours not eating. But that basically is the concept, is that you're giving yourself more time in your day to repair and not to focus on digestion.
That's so interesting. There's so
Mm-hmm.
much to talk about fasting. Even
Yes.
eating during the day, if you're constantly grazing during the day, a lot of what your body gets done is digestion. If you eat breakfast and then an hour later you're having a snack, and an hour later you're eating something. Um,
Yep. Yep. And that really doesn't give your body a whole lot of time to respond properly to insulin either. So we get There's a lot of things that go into strategic eating throughout your day. But people, unless you are pregnant or a child who is growing and developing, or if you have a condition like hypoglycemia or diabetes, for instance, to name a few, most of us should be focusing on eating 2 to 3 robust, nutrient-dense meals and have that be it. You know, that this concept that you need to be eating every 2 to 3 hours, I don't fall into that camp unless it's actually for the treatment of a health condition, and or you're in a stage of your life in which you need to have more stable blood sugar balance. But yeah, that just went on a little bit of a divergence there, but partly for our ability to clean up, but also partly to give our body time to be more sensitive to these hormones that we need to actually function properly, like insulin, for instance.
Well, what do you feel like it means to live mindfully with food? So, being mindful with our food. I'm a big proponent of being mindful with movement. Um, but being mindful with food, I think, is a different concept for a lot of people. So, what do you feel like it means to be mindful and live mindfully with food in our lives?
I think it is so true. I think that the main reason that people don't quite grasp this concept is because being mindful with food requires slowing down. And we're constantly living in a life where everything is go, 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 go. And it's hard. It's hard to find that sense of slowness throughout the day, but not only slowing down to read your body's cues and to understand your body's cues, because your body is constantly talking to you, constantly. Every single minute of every single day, your body is giving you an idea of how well you're doing or not doing, right? And that takes a slowing down for us to say, oh, I know that feeling. That's actually not hunger. That's actually, I'm thirsty and I haven't drank in a while. I need to go get some water. Or, I'm feeling this emotion and it's hitting me here and I'm, wanting to go grab a food to cope with that thing. And maybe you still do, but let's identify what it is that's your motivating reason for eating, right? What is the why behind why you're deciding to go eat? All of these are really important things that require a bit of slowing down and really asking yourself some questions. Um, and whether or not you decide to eat really doesn't matter. And what you decide to eat is kind of up to you in a lot of ways. And I try to work with my patients on how to figure out the best strategy for their own body and what they're working on. But at the end of the day, mindfulness in food comes from mindfulness in body and being able to understand what your body's cues are, what is happening inside. And then also, once you've gotten there, which a lot of people haven't gotten there yet, and that's, we have to work up to that stage. But once you've gotten there, the next stage is being okay with the decision you've made around food. And that's a huge component because some people are eating and maybe they know that they've identified that they're going to make a decision that maybe they'll regret later, and now they're just adding this undue emotional stress around guilt and shame around food, which doesn't need to exist. So I work on with my patients this idea of thanking your food for whatever it is. Like if you say you've identified that you're just wanting to indulge in chocolate and you feel sad or whatever, then you say, hey, thank you, chocolate, for being a coping mechanism during this time. You're providing a lot of sweetness for this moment right now that I really, really need, and thank you for that. And now you're forging a different relationship with your food. Now you're forging a kinship with your food rather than, you're bad, you're good, this kind of alienation around food that can be very emotionally taxing on our body and our brain. So
I love that slowing down because I think some of the relationship between ourselves and who we are and food is steeped in guilt and shame. especially for, I can only speak for myself, but I can speak for some of my clients as well, is if you're someone who is always trying to lose weight or is dissatisfied with the way they look or is, then there's always this constant battle with, ooh, shouldn't eat that much or shouldn't eat that thing or I enjoy this so
Yeah.
it must be bad. So
Yep.
sometimes I think to take the enjoyment and to be as healthy as possible, as
Mm-hmm.
many times as possible, but it's okay to uh, gain pleasure when you eat.
Yes.
Food should be
Yes.
pleasurable, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It should be pleasurable. It should be exciting. It should be tantalizing. It should be exciting, visually appealing. It should be all the things that appeal to all of your senses, right? We're in a body, and that's exciting too. That's one of the benefits of being in a body is we can feel and taste and be excited
Yeah.
about the things that we're eating, right? And a
Mm-hmm.
variety of other things. But yeah, there's a lot of self-efficacy that I work on with patients around um, food and whether or not, and this sometimes takes a psychological approach in going back into childhood and how you were brought up, what kind of body image messages were you fed as a child that maybe are taking its toll today, or so a lot of it does the slowing down, not only to read your body's cues, but to be able to say, oh, this is a physical thing I'm feeling, or maybe it's an
Right.
emotional thing that you're feeling, or maybe it's a spiritual thing that you're feeling. And these require some quiet time to be able to identify what it is, because again, maybe regardless of what the answer is, maybe it is an emotional thing and you still decide to eat the food. Okay, go eat the food, but now you've identified it, now you've recognized what's happening, and now you can say, I'm going to eat the food anyways and I'm going to enjoy it. And now I know what I need to work on. I'm anxious because of work. I'm anxious because of a deadline coming up, or I'm really sad that my daughter's gone off to college and I'm sad about that, or whatever the situation is, right? We're always going through ebbs and flows throughout our life, and holding yourself accountable to answering those questions is the enlightenment, right? And now you can say, I'm not being um, run by food. Food is there to help me and keep me sane and healthy and happy. And sometimes it's a coping mechanism, and that's okay. But now you've identified the other things around it so that you can actually go and fix, or attempt to fix anyways, what's happening
Right.
that's not physical.
And you're not driven by your cravings. You're not driven by the food. You're making that choice. Once you know what it's for, I think part of it
Now you
is
have the
the
choice.
control. I I'm in control. I'm making this choice. And yeah, I may make the
Mm-hmm.
choice for, mashed potatoes with gravy this time. Or maybe that's not a bad choice for me. Maybe it's not.
Yep.
But I know why I'm making this choice and I'm doing it consciously. That's the self-efficacy and grabbing control of the situation. I think that putting people in control
Absolutely.
is a big key to
Absolutely.
being healthy in
Yep.
mind and spirit
Yep.
and body, right?
Yep. Yep. Absolutely. Because they're, like you said, it's a tier approach. If you're healthy, and sometimes it's funny because sometimes I've toyed with which comes first sometimes, because our body comes I lean towards our body coming first, because we do need to be healthy in our body in order to be healthy in our brain. But sometimes our brain can really help us out, right? Like, hey,
Right.
it's okay that I'm making this decision, but it's a lot easier to be in that healthy mind state if you have taking care of your body first. Because if you're super inflamed or ill, it's hard to be mentally sound to be able to make those um,
Right.
self compassionate decisions in your life, right?
Oh, self-compassion. I think that's a great phrase.
Yes,
Because sometimes we don't have it, right?
most of the
We can have
time, most of the
compassion for
time.
everybody around us, but when it comes to us,
It's very hard. And I do wonder sometimes if that's American. I don't think it's just innately American. I don't get the sense that it is, but it's hard. We definitely make it especially hard in this country too. I think there's people tend to glorify being busy, glorify self-deprecation, glorify humility, or seeming,
Right.
humble or whatever. When that doesn't have to, they're different things, and I think people struggle to really live in their authentic self-love sometimes for fear of seeming a certain way. But yeah, it's all related. It's all related.
It's an essential element. I agree, because part of eating and nutrition and being healthy is a self-care. If you don't value yourself, then what's the value in feeding yourself well? So I think we
Yeah,
do. That is
and
part of the basis of nutrition. So
yep, and
I
our
love
our
what you
emotions.
do. I love your philosophies, and I learned something new today. So I think
Good,
I think that is
good,
great. Yay! So thank you
yay.
so much for
You're
your
so
time with me,
welcome.
Melanie. I hope we get to
You're so
speak again,
welcome.
because there's so many more questions that I have for you.
Please,
But I know you don't have
yes,
all day.
please. I know. I really appreciate it. I love these conversations. I'm so grateful that you're creating the platform to have them. I appreciate that.
Well, thank you for being here, and I hope to talk to you again soon.
Yes, absolutely. We'll chat soon.